Lunaverse by Rainbow Double Dash. Episode 7 Where There's Smoke by Frizzy Orange. Chapter 1. Corona was walking. She could hardly believe it herself. To be reduced to this. Sadly, there was no other way, as she was still too weak from her recent defeat to teleport her minions around, and she didn't dare leave behind the only support she had in this world to be devoured by roaming beasts. As feeble as the Seaver was, she still knew her way around this dastardly forest. And her humbled, hidden home had been covered with enough wards that even Luna had failed to find her in her moment of weakness. The baby dragon wasn't much, and he certainly should use a lesson in loyalty from his striped friend, but he made for a decent beatstick should the need arise. Now Celestia felt much better in the direct aftermath of her defeat, yet still too weak to risk any major confrontation. Still, the Seaver's hut was too small for a queen such as herself, and as such she required new lodging. And that is what they had intended to claim with this little walk. Up ahead, visible through the thick foliage and undergrowth, was a large cave on the side of a rocky peak, large enough that she could set herself a worthy throne as she waited for her power to recover. Maybe even carve the entire stone formation into a grand palace, celebrating her glory. I really don't think this is a good idea, Z, whispered Spike, unaware that the alicorn walking ahead of them could hear him. Do not fear, little scaly one. Our queen's power you mustn't question, replied Sakura in her usual rhyming style. But that guy is huge, said the baby dragon, spreading his arm as wide as possible. Size do not matter. If the sun, he does anger. Quiet! Ordered Corona, turning to face her two minions with anger etched on her regal face. Minions should be heard unless your queen requires it. Sakura and Spike jumped in fright, and they both bowed silently. The rest of the walk toward the cave was done in a blissful silence. Finally, they entered the large cave, a strong aroma of sulfur assailing their noses as they made their way further inside. They soon came in front of a ridiculously large hoard of riches. Gold, silver, jewels of all kinds, all piled up into a mound taller than Celestia herself. The ponies had shunned her favorite metal gold in favor of Luna's silver, but there were still plenty of species in the world that appreciated gold. Dragons were, in general, big fans of it. A dragon needs to eat gems and the magic contained within to feed themselves. But gold and silver were amassed mostly out of sheer greed, although in a pinch a dragon could eat any mineral to survive. Greed was a powerful impulse of dragons, and when it went unchecked, it caused them to be horribly greedy beasts that grow in size along with their hoard. Corona looked upon the pile of loot with a smile. The gold used to fasten her a worthy phone, while the gems and silver could be used to bribe those pathetic mortal nobles so she could press their Luna from the shadows during her recovery. All she needed to do was take care of the owner of that hoard. An owner who was slowly waking up from his nap on top of said hoard. The large dragon's nostrils twitched as he took in the scents of the alicorn, zebra, and baby dragon. His eyes snapped open, and he sat on his haunches, staring angrily at the intruders. This is my cave! My hoard! Get out! He bellowed in a loud, rumbling voice. Corona's wings flared dramatically as she floated up, holding her head at a height that allowed her to look down on the giant beast. We are Celestia! We are the sun! We are thy queen! Bow! She declared stoically. The dragon glared back at her defiantly, obviously annoyed by the goddess. He snorted once, shooting a plume of dark smoke right into Corona's face as he began coughing loudly. Her coughing was halted when a large red claw swatted her out of the air, ramming her with the force of 20 charging buffaloes. The alicorn was sent flying into the nearby cave wall, her loud impact causing the stone to crack. She landed flat on the ground, to the twin gasps from her minions. The alicorn lay motionless for 5 agonizing seconds before her eyes snapped open, and full of fury of scorn. We are ready to show thee mercy, to welcome thee to our employ, she said, standing up slowly. Thou darest lay thy filthy mortal hands upon thy goddess! Then mortal hands shall be thy downfall! Corona's horn began to shine brightly, illuminating every dark corner of the cave. The display was somewhat impressive, but not the brightest Sakura had seen from her queen. The deceiver could guess she was preparing a spell of great power, but she was also struggling. Beads of sweat were starting to roll down Corona's face when Sakura realized what the spell was. Spike also realized what it was. Oh no! Please! No, 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 no! Anything but that! No! Sakura ducked out of the way as quickly as the spell flew for Corona's horn. Her quick movement sent the baby dragon flying off her back. He comically did a few spins in the air before he was hit by the beam and engulfed in light. The red dragon, who, so far, only watched the display with mild curiosity, was suddenly taken by surprise when a fist, much bigger than his own, seemed to grow from the light and deliver a powerful uppercut to his face. The red dragon was sped sprawling onto the background onto his pile of loot. Disoriented, he looked up, and his eyes grew twice their size, terror appearing on his face. Before him stood the artificially aged baby dragon from earlier, fully powered by the greed Corona would constantly deny having. The purple dragon now stood at least 2 heads taller than the red one. Furthermore, his eyes, devoid of any spark of intelligence, spoke of nothing but violence and anger. With a roar, Spike threw himself at the other dragon. Sakura watched the fight with a strange mix of awe, fascination, and horror. Each powerful hit from Spike she winced, and with each of the red dragon's cries of pain she flinched. Oh, that is a most brutal spectacle. It makes my blood curdle, she said as her queen walked up to her. A loud crackling noise echoed through the chamber. Both Corona and Sakura quickly stepped aside before a large piece of the dragon's horn landed between them. Impressive, conceded Corona, with appreciation in her voice. Another series of impacts and roars brought Sakura's attention back to the fight. Corona brought up a shield of radiant light just in time to block a stray splatter of draconic blood. Sakura, however, was left defenseless and found herself sprayed in blood. She stood stock still, shocked into praise. After a second, she finally spoke. I can taste it in my mouth. Corona eyed her servant with curiosity. The lack of rhyming was rather surprising, as she was waiting to see how the zebra would follow through. Much to the Alcorn's surprise, the zebra just turned around and began to vomit behind a rock. Meanwhile, the red dragon's howls of pain had turned to whimpers as he begged his assailant to stop. Finally, tired of this game, the giant Spike grabbed hold of his bloodied open and, with a mighty heave, threw him out of the cave entrance. The unmistakable sound of cracking wood filled the air as the dragon crashed through the trees outside. That was soon followed by the sound of a fleeting dragon. The purple dragon roared in triumph just as light engulfed him, leaving behind a baby dragon sleeping in a pool of his victim's blood. Thou shalt clean this cave and your companion, once thou hast finished relieving thyself of thy lunch, Corona ordered, looking back at Sakura. And go bathe thyself too, thou weak! The Alicorn began to pace around the cave, admiring the various pieces of her new treasures, and already planning where her throne would be. This cave wasn't bad for a temporary lair. It would be much better once there was a few more holes to let light in from the sun, and a few drapes wouldn't hurt either. As she did so, she began to think out loud. Our draconic minion was most impressive. However, he is not a dependable asset, merely the best tool in an empty toolbox. I need someone else to go and hassle those accursed corrupted element wielders. Someone I can count on, she said, before stopping in front of a gold plate being used to hold 2 bright red rubies. The colors reflected in her eyes, and a malevolent smile spread across the mad Alicorn's face. Yes! She must still be alive. Luna sealed her off somewhere, and I must free her. I need her. I need Philomena. Sakura let out a squeal of surprise as he slipped out of a puddle of blood and ended up falling backward into a different puddle she had left behind that rock. Corona flinched at the scene. Ew! My little pony, ah, my little pony, friendship never meant that much to me, my little pony. But now you're all here, and now I can see stormy weather, a loss to share, a musical bond with loving care, teaching laughter. It's an easy feat, and that's it makes it all complete. You have my little ponies. How did I ever make so many true friends? Lunaverse created by Rainbow Double Dash. It can happen only on the hub. Provided by Hasbro. The human air of the jungle was alive with the sound of critters, birds, and the thunderous roar of a nearby waterfall. Life was simply everywhere in this sea of green, regardless of the oppressive humidity and harsh heat. However, all that life seemed to suddenly scurry away in fear, leaving nothing but the sound of the waterfall to breach the silence. Corona, Tyrant's son, landed on the rock outcropping, overlooking the pool at the bottom of the waterfall. The mad alicorn's eyes were beginning to back to being blank, but her mind had yet to recover its flaming quality just yet. She surveyed the scene, knowing it was exactly as the information she had obtained said it was. Those had been well-spent silver coins, and had given it something to do during those last few months. An isolated southern valley, a rocky cliff, and a waterfall falling into a moon-crescent-shaped pond surrounded by trees adorned with strange blue fruits. Were there supposed to be bananas? And of course, the air was as humid as he had been led to believe. Nothing could catch on fire under normal circumstances. The presence of Celestia, the sun herself, was not a normal circumstance. She began walking toward the waterfall, following a rocky path. When she was close enough, she could step behind it. The water seemed to recoil at her very presence, and allowed the self-proclaimed queen to walk to the hidden cave beyond without getting her mane wet. At the end of a dark, gloomy, and wet tunnel, lying in the shallow recesses of a rock filled with wire, stood a bronze box with symbols dating back to the time Celestia and Luna were together. This box was yet another reminder of Celestia's past, and the profound betrayal of her misguided little sister. "Thou hast rested long enough! Awaken our servant! Wreak havoc in our name! Burn away our enemies in thy flames! Rise from your ashes once more, Philomena!" said Corona, her horn shining like a sun. In a flash, all humidity of the dirty cave was eliminated, the walls and floor turning as dry as they would be in the desert. The powerful hoof of Corona shattered the bronze box, and it erupted into flame almost immediately. Corona let out a hearty laugh as the whole cave was engulfed in bright flames. "Make haste, my faithful servant! Thy flames will deliver burning vengeance upon the fools who divide us! Hear our will, Philomena! May Ponyville be consumed by thy ravenous fire!" she declared, between the two bouts of maniacal laughter. This was going to be glorious. Of this, Corona had no doubt. Trixie exited the town hall with a beaming smile on her face, an expression not shared by Pokey Pierce, her assistant, who was following her. The administrative assistant to the representative of Night Court of Luna was carrying a pair of saddlebags decorated in the same pattern as Trixie's cape and hat, sported an expression of boredom. Trixie trotted ahead, happily before turning toward her assistant. "I can't believe they finally asked for my help breaking a tie on a city council vote!"
"Yeah, you have to wonder how they could manage before the great and powerful Trixie came to town,"
replied the Unicorn Stallion. Trixie frowned and resumed walking, her smile returning. "Hush you! It's the first time I got to execute that particular executive power. It feels exhilarating to have an impact on every pony's life. It feels like I'm truly part of Ponyville's political landscape now."
"Yes, I'm sure that your decisive vote on the question of whether the next official flyer should be blue or green will be celebrated for years to come. Should I frame up our copy of the City Council reunion transcript?"
he asked, with so much stimulated, genuine enthusiasm that it took Trixie a second or two to realize he was being sarcastic. "No," said Trixie, frowning again. "However, I want you to make me 2 half-written copies and put it in a special folder so I can keep a record of all times that I will have an impact on the City Council."
"You're just saying that to give me more work," said Poking, before snickering well. "I must have poked a sore spot if you needed me to point out your relevance to me."
Trixie brought a hoof for her face. "That was just terrible! Sometimes I wonder why I even put up with you."
"Maybe because you know that you had to hire someone else if you fired me. Maybe because you know you're a terribly demanding boss, and only somebody as persevering as me could stay longer to the week. Maybe because you had my background checked, and you are 100% certain I am not currently plotting your demise along with some needy Night Court noble. Currently," said Pokey, with a genuine smile, snickering as he added that last part.
Trixie rolled her eyes. Maybe we should take this act on the road. We could make a killing at vaudeville. Pokey's eyebrows jumped high in surprise, and he stopped walking.
And share the spotlight with little old me? Who are you, and what have you done with the representative?
He asked, pointing an accusing hoof at Trixie. Of course I'd get top billing, said Trixie, putting her hoof to her chest in mock offense. Now, enough fooling around. Let's head back to the office and finish up for today. The two unicorns continued to head toward the residency. Trixie followed into silence as Pokey began to tell a long and convoluted story. Thankfully for Trixie, something was about to come up that would afford her more freedom from all that rambling.
And then I said, I'm not, and don't call me oatmeal. It was hilarious,
said Pokey before breaking into her hearty laugh. Ha ha ha! Trixie was about to thank Luna the story was over, before her voice resounded over Ponyville. The horror! The horror! This is horrible! Horrible! Everything is burning away! Somebody help! The two unicorns turned to the direction of the cries. A small puff of cloud was escaping from a nearby building. Trixie looked at Pokey Pierce, and the stallion nodded, much to Trixie's confusion.
This looks serious for a change. Let's go, boss,
said Pokey, galloping towards the smoke. Trixie blinked multiple times, looking between the cloud and the spot her assistant used to occupy. Oh, you mean we should... Hey! Wait for me! And with that, she took off after the stallion. Chapter 2. Raindrops was smiling. Trixie could hardly believe it. Not a smirk or a sneer, but a smile. Not an ironic or sarcastic, but a genuine grin. It was the kind of grin that would make Pinkie Pie break out into song and then parade down the street so you could only catch half of what he just saying. The jasmine-coated Pegasus was currently bouncing up and down on the dark rain cloud a few feet off the ground, sending a torrent of water flooding the little garden space below her. That little front yard garden space also served as a display area for Daisy's flower shop. Right now, though, it wasn't a very good marketing tool. Not only was it now flooded, but there was a large circle of carbonized flower remains. Huh, I think you can stop now, Raindrops, said Trixie, feeling a bit apprehensive about interrupting Raindrops' fun. The Pegasus stopped bouncing, shutting off the rain, and almost immediately her grin dissolved away. She then slumped down on the cloud and looked at the scene below her with a neutral expression. Raindrops the stoic was back, and Trixie allowed herself a small sigh of relief. Seeing her friend getting emotional like that was somehow unnerving, but she had been even more worried about how it would end. Happy she wasn't going to get hit by the Pegasus again, the unicorn then turned to the flower trio. Daisy, Rose, and Lily spent so much time together that many in Ponyville wondered they were sisters, and as such, every pony referred to the three of them as the flower trio. Daisy operated a flower shop, mostly decorative flowers, but a few comestible ones as well. She had associated her with her old friend Lily, who ran a flower farm, to sell her product. Lily's specialty was being a fantastic flower breeder, capable of obtaining the right mixes of characteristics in a flower. Her problem was, she wasn't that good at taking care of fragile and finicky flowers. She tended to overwater her crop. That's where Rose came in, with her talent to nurture flowers, to help shore up Lily's weaknesses. Finally, Daisy created the best flower arrangements this side of Canterlot, and the three had a decent amount of success, and were well regarded in Ponyville for their beautiful products. They were also infamous for their melodramatic tendencies. Right now, Rose was fanning Lily, who had fainted mere moments before Trixie and Pokey had reached the scene. So, let me get this straight, began Trixie, quoting the police chief from one of the mystery novels she enjoyed. You came back from lunch and found that your Furra garden was now on fire? Oh, by the sweet glare of the moon, yes! Our beautiful flowers, it goes into the inferno! It was like Corona was back to reduce us all to cinders, said Daisy, tears forming in the ends of her eyes. The world is burning! Burning! Shouted Lily, suddenly waking up. It's okay, Lily. It's over now, said Rose, soothing her friend. This, somehow, didn't calm the excited mare. Oh no! It's over! All over! She means the fire's taken care of, said Raindrops from her cloud, a bored expression on her face. Oh! Simply said Lily, getting up and smiling at the Pegasus. That's good then. Thank you, Mrs. Raindrops. The Pegasus waved it off. No problem.
What do you think caused this fire?
Asked Pokey, who was studying the perfect round shape of the burnt flowers in the soaked garden.
Did you girls hear or see anything?
Daisy replied in the negative, while Lily and Rose looked at each other before simply shaking their heads. The unicorn stallion's brow furrowed as he rubbed his chin with his hoof. It better not be Rainbow Dash up to her old tricks again, said Raindrops, an edge to her voice. Well, if they didn't hear anything, then it can't be a lightning strike that caused it, commented Trixie.
There's no way you could set fire to fresh plants with a simple match,
added Pokey, pointing a hoof at the garden.
You would need a dry plant for it to catch on fire like that, or use some sort of fuel like cooking oil. I don't see any sign of that.
His boss nodded in agreement. The only explanation I can think of is a fire spell. That is, unless Corona did come back, except she was now 1 apple tall. The miniature giant sun is stalking us! Declared Lily, almost fainting again. Even Rose and Daisy rolled their eyes at her overdramatic display. I'm pretty sure she was just joking, said Rose.
And even there, the great and
powerful Trixie would protect you from the tyrant sun, declared the unicorn. The lone stallion at the scene turned to Trixie.
Why don't you cast your magic detection spell on the garden and see if there's any residual energy left? That is, if you can see anything with your giant ego in the way.
Trixie closed her eyes and concentrated. The blue glow of her magic started to coalesce around her horn before it suddenly flashed, momentarily blinding the ponies around her. When she opened her eyes, they were pools of blue light rather than the usual violet orbs. This was the first spell Princess Luna had taught to her student. This spell allowed Trixie to see magic. All kinds of magic, not just unicorn magic like a mundane detect magic spell would. Princess Luna had explained to Trixie that the world was filled with all sorts of magic. Limiting oneself to only one kind was a waste of efforts. The garden is flooded with magic, but not unicorn magic, began Trixie. There's earth pony magic in the flowers left untouched, and the water is literally bursting with residual Pegasus magic. Seriously, Raindrops, you impress me. Sadly, it's overtaking any residual magic that may be left. Pokey looked even more confused and in concentration before he spoke up.
What a mystery!
Raindrops chuckled a little, attracting the attention of the pair of unicorns. You two are enjoying this, aren't you? You're acting like a couple of detectives. It's his fault, said the blustery representative, pointing an accusing hoof at her assistant. He was reading on his break, and he got me hooked on the new detective novel series.
Which reminds me, the library should have the new Ace of Clover in,
Pokey said with a smile that turned into a smirk.
But I already reserved it for you, so you'll have to wait until I'm done with it to get a stab at it yourself.
Trixie glared at her assistant and was about to say something when another chuckle from Raindrops broke her outfit. She coughed a little to regain composure and leveled a friendly gaze at the flower trio. Raindrops has a point, though. It's not really our job to investigate this. In the meantime, I'll fill a form so you can use it to file an insurance claim.
No, you won't,
started the stallion, eyeing himself a scornful look that he pointedly ignored.
Mostly because I've already done so.
A piece of paper flew over to Daisy, carried in the silver glimmer of Pokey's telekinesis. He gave her a smile as he thanked him and grabbed hold of the form. Trixie blinked in surprise. Where did you get that form? The stallion shrugged.
Shadowbags. When we go out, I make it a point to carry a copy of every form from the Red Book.
You mean that book about disaster relief? Every form? Answered the credulous Trixie.
I'm working for you, in Ponyville. I wouldn't be very sharp if I didn't carry forms to deal with sudden floods, fires, and 26 flavors of magical mayhems.
Trixie groaned. Ugh. When Trixie and Pokey got back to the residency, they found a beige unicorn stallion with a green mane and a bowler hat waiting for them on the front porch. The unicorn was wearing a very formal business suit and had a very small briefcase set down beside him, one that matched the fountain on his flank. His expression was a careful mix of boredom, exasperation, and professional calm, the kind that screamed of a Carolina bureaucrat. Trixie felt a bit apprehensive as she walked up to him, assisted in tow. The unicorn took in her Garrus hat and cape with a slight twitch of his eyebrow.
Representative for Lunaverse, I presume.
Yes, and you are?
I am Inspector Serious Audit.
Serious Audit? Only in Ponyfix, people. Only in Ponyfix. This way, the unicorn, flashing a piece of ID with his telekinesis.
I am here on behalf of the Royal Equestrian Public Safety Commission.
To say Trixie was surprised by the visit was an understatement. She gestured to Pokey behind her as she went to unlock her door.
Well, Inspector Vaughn, this is my administrative assistant, Pokey Pierce. We just returned from a meeting at Town Hall where I was needed to break a tie. I am sorry we left you waiting. I'm normally in at such a time of day.
Serious Audit did a polite nod and screamed to Pokey before he followed Trixie into the residency.
Well, if you are held up by official duties, there is no reason to apologize, Representative Lunaverse.
Trixie, please,
she said, cursing slightly.
We got mail while we were away,
pointed out Pokey, dropping a pair of sealed scrolls on Trixie's desk while they all settled down. Trixie glanced at him and noticing the blue sealing wax and seal on the first two, inwardly groaning when she realized who sent it. The second one had more common red wax and a very generic seal she had never seen before, indicating that whoever had sent it might wish to remain anonymous. She decided to worry about it after she was done with her visit.
So, what brings you all the way out to Ponyville, Inspector Audit?
She said with a smile, trying to sound as friendly as possible. Serious Audit took in the decor of Trixie's office, without saying a word or cracking a smile before he turned toward her.
The Commission is concerned with the number of requests coming in from Ponyville since you've taken this post. We understand that Ponyville was the epicenter of the Tired Sun's release, so extra relief was to be expected. But then after the events of the Longest Night celebration, you have done a lot of requests. Flooding during winter wrap-up, pepper spray infestation, a minor attack, and a lots of nebulous Everfree weather incidents regarding wild weather patterns. I'm here to inspect your file as well as the paperwork of City Hall for any irregularities. And if I find them, to solve the problem.
We've had our shares of incidents, it's true, but it's not that enormous. A lot of those requests were for small-time damage, and a lot of those were already practically covered by private insurance,
said Trixie, feeling a smile before the stoic gaze of the inspector.
Let's cut to tap dance, Inspector. You're basically accusing Trixie here, or Mayor, or both, of cheating the system and putting the money to fraudulent use, said Pokey. Frankly, I'm surprised you guys didn't show up sooner.
Trixie gasped.
Pokey!
Once again, the only thing to portray the emotions on Audit's stern face was a slight twitch of eyebrow.
Suspect, yes. Accused, not yet. This would hardly be a new caper, and so that the possibility must be considered. Your assistant likes to get to the heart of the matter, Representative Blue Moon. It's a quality that is certainly most excusing his rather obvious insubordinate streak. I'd make it a point to honor always Pierce through the core of the matter, the stallion replied, returning to making that copy of the transcript for Trixie. In any case, I will be staying in town for a few days, and I hope to have your full cooperation in resolving this embarrassing matter,
said the Bates Unicorn Stallion, standing up.
Now, if you'll excuse me, I still need to talk to Mayor Ivory Scroll and secure some lodging.
Of course, Inspector. I'll do everything to make your job quick and effective. As for lodging, they're working on Ponyville's finest motel, and I believe the finished half of the building is open for business. Otherwise, the City Hall has a room set aside for such official visits,
explained Trixie, escorting the inspector out. When the door closed, she let out a sigh. She wasn't all happy about that turn of events, and Pokey was right that the Commission would eventually take notice of Ponyville, especially since there were the elements of harmony left. Pokey's insolence was refreshing at the time, but when an official visit was in town, it turned out to be a tad embarrassing. So he decided not to worry about it too much, as none of the money requested for disaster relief had been used for anything but relief, and so the town had nothing to hide from inspection. And in the meantime, she had some letters to get to.
Try to hold your tongue next time the inspector's around, needle brain,
she scolded as she walked back to her office.
I make no promises.
With a roll of her eyes, she went to open the first scroll. The blue wax and seal clearly indicated this was a letter from the Blue Blood family. As she expected, she found it to be a letter from her old acquaintance, Prince Blue Blood, Vice Count of the Night Court. She had an inkling of what that letter might be, when she saw the ridiculously polished hoof writing in that letter, something she had indicated to some secretary. She had no need to actually read the words to know what it was. This was his usual invitation to be his date at the Grand Galby Gala. This was the 5th time he had sent her such an invitation, and every time before she had turned him down. This year wasn't going to be any different. Prince must be the most eligible bachelor at Canterlot, according to the media, but in person he was a brass, blustering, and blunt buffoon. Trixie crumpled the invitation and threw it at Pokey's head from her space at the desk. Much to her amusement, the ball of paper went and got itself paled on Stallion's sharp horn. He went cross-eyed, staring at the offended ball.
"Send a negative response to that letter on my behalf, would you?"
said Trixie, before moving on to the next scroll. This one had much more simple hoof writing. It was steady like that of a unicorn, but lacked any of the flourishes and sophistication of a trained secretary's style. As he read over the missive, Trixie's face became more and more livid. Her pupils shrank.
"Flies the boot!"
she loudly let out, angrily slamming both her hooves on the front desk. Pokey fell backwards at the sudden outburst. "What?"
"That jerk!"
Trixie said, pointing to the letter.
"He's blackmailing me!"
Pokey got back to standing correctly and looked at Trixie with confusion. "Who? What? Why?"
"Viscount Blueblood,"
she said. As continued confusion, she decided to go on.
"You know how Rainbow Dash's pranks got added to the list of natural disasters by the previous Night Court representative."
I remember. He got her in a section under Everfree Weather Phenomena header as an untamable force of nature.
Well, his nephew, Prince, is threatening to reveal the whole scam to Inspector Audit and make it look like it was me and the mayor's fault if I don't accept his invitation to the Grand Calabi Gala.
Trixie said, anger filling her voice.
"If I don't send a positive RSVP before the inspector leaves town, the documents will reach him."
He's going to frame you for something his uncle did? What an eel! Can't you just report his blackmailing? You've got the letter and everything,"
asked Pokey, pointing to the letter that she had just read. A letter that suddenly burst into flames, crumbling to ashes on Trixie's desk. Trixie looked at Pokey with a deadpan expression. "Oh," he toned. "Well, at least we know he's not a complete idiot."
"Well, excuse me if I don't find that notion comforting," replied Trixie.
Pokey shrugged and gave her a smirk.
"It would look kind of bad on your resume if you got trounced by a moron, wouldn't it? So, what do you intend to do?"
Trixie sighed as she slumped down on her cushion.
"I don't know yet. Let's just get work done, and maybe I'll go ask one of my friends for counsel."
"Who? Cheerily? She's good with legal matters,"
said Pokey, setting Blueblood's invitation aside, in case Trixie had no other choices.
"No. Mr. Bourbon! Shaker! My easel, please. I need it,"
Trixie said, addressing the stallion behind the bar. The gray-coated unicorn smiled at her and walked up to her place at the bar. Shaker was the nighttime bar point at Barry's, the soda parlor and bar operated by Barry Punch. He came into work when the alcohol was unlocked, and the parlor turned from a family establishment to Trixie's favorite spot for sociable drinking in Ponyville. Not that Ponyville had much choice when it came to bars, but it was an admirable place to visit.
"Actually, Miss Trixie, if you don't mind, Barry's got a new cocktail she wants you to try. She wants you to make it to the nighttime Trixie special."
He said, referring to the original soda mixes Barry Punch had designed and named after each of the elements of harmony. The Trixie special was normally a mix of birch beer, cream soda, and a quick shot of bluegrass juice for a little zing. It wasn't very popular, but Trixie liked it, and that was what was important. Yeah, it was a little rough out the edges, and sometimes it can be a little annoying, but we liked to drink anyway.
"There's bourbon in it?"
asked the unicorn with a raised eyebrow. Shaker grinned broadly.
"Of course there is. It's Bonafide, bourbon, Campari, and sweet vermouth. The little twist here is that instead of ice cubes, we're using frozen blueberries."
Trixie pondered a second and then nodded.
"That's the elixir, my good poison peddler."
The stallion curtsied with a smile.
"With all due taste, my lady."
Shaker went to work, just as the door to the establishment opened. Trixie turned and broke into a smile when she saw it was Raindrops walking in. The Pegasus waved to the unicorn and made her way to the bar. "Hey, Trixie," she said.
"Hey, Rainsy, what brings you here?"
asked Trixie, happy to see her friend. "I was on my way home when I saw you coming in. Thought I'd come in and say hello, since we didn't have much time to talk earlier today." Trixie nodded in agreement.
"Yeah, we were both on duty at the time after all. So, where were you coming from?"
"I went to see Chief Fire Splasher after work, about the fire earlier," she said.
"Does Ponyville even have a fire inspector in its fire department?"
asked Trixie. Raindrops shook her head. "No, the fire department is only Chief Splasher and volunteers like me. but he said he would go on the site to take a look, in case we missed anything. Saker came back with a ruby-red drink in a glass and put it down in front of Trixie. Raindrops took his hands to order some ginger ale with citrus, while Trixie took a sip of her cocktail. Trixie closed her eyes and smiled happily.
Oh, rich blend of flavors. I love it! Tell Barry that she can put it on the menu with my name on it. This is officially approved by the element of magic.
Saker went out to get Raindrops' order with a satisfied smile on his face. Trixie took another sip and let out a sigh.
This should make me forget that nasty surprise, she said.
Nasty surprise? Unicorn then told her Pegasus friend about what happened when she returned to her residency earlier that day, as well as the 2 letters from Blue Blood, explaining that yes, his name was Prince, and he actually was Viscount. Trixie then went on to tell of his previous intentions. Why does that scumbag care so much about that invitation anyway? Asked Raindrops, sipping her ginger ale. Trixie sighed and looked into the red pool of her drink.
I don't know. I think the first time he just wanted to get on Luna's good side by being nice to me. But then when I refused, he took it as a personal affront. And now, I guess he wants to impress the other nobles by how close to the element of magic he is.
Raindrops rubbed her chin with her hoof. Think there's better guys on it? Trixie shook her head.
If he was crooked, he would be the one doing the blackmailing instead of Blue Blood risking a letter to me. I think Otta is a straight guy. He's just a Blue Blood and pawn in Blue Blood's scheme here.
So, what are you going to do then? Trixie didn't have time to respond. Cries for help were suddenly heard outside the bar. When Trixie and Raindrops turned to look through the front window, they caught sight of an orange-yellow glow. Quickly, the 2 of them dashed to the front door, followed by Shaker and some of the patrons. They burst outside and found a parked cart engulfed in flames.
My God!
Wailed one of the other patrons, a green unicorn stallion. Shaker quickly turned back inside and came back holding a bucket of water in telekinetic field. In the meantime, Raindrops had taken off to find the nearest cloud. Together, the 2 of them took care of the fire before it could spread to anything else. Trixie took this opportunity to ask some of the bystanders, including the one who called for help, when she had noticed the burning cart.
I'm sorry, I didn't see or hear anything. I just turned the corner and saw the cart on fire,
answered the Earth Pony mare. Raindrops landed next to Trixie and looked at her friend with confusion on his face. You think this is related to what happened to Daisy's garden?
I hope it isn't, Raindrops,
replied the unicorn, grim expression on her face.
Otherwise, Ponyville's in trouble.
Trixie was singing. Chapter 3. Pokey could hardly believe it. Not the singing part of itself, as that was par for the course when Trixie was in her shower. In fact, he was pleasantly relieved that she didn't conjure up an illusionary cheering audience this time. No, the real problem was the timing. It was already running late by the time he had entered the residency, meaning that Trixie must have woken up quite later than usual to not be done with her morning ritual yet. On the other hoof, the singing was a good sign that Trixie wasn't nursing a hangover. Then again, she was friends with Carrot Tops, so she usually had the farmer's hangover cure on hoof. The fact that Trixie was still in her shower was a problem, because Pokey had done a very good dramatic entrance, only to find no pony to witness it. He decided to wait for his boss by getting ahead in his paperwork. Something told him that they wouldn't be done much office work today. From his desk, he could fully appreciate Trixie's singing, to the tune of the day being something from her native Orleans that Pokey just didn't quite understand. Warning. Even though my mother is half French Canadian, and that makes me 1/3 French Canadian, and I've actually taken 3 years of French, it's been ages since I spoke the language. So, to all my French listeners out there, I would like to apologize for the following destruction of the language. I hope I can do a good job. Je suis dans la bade, on bas dans la macade, pas de luna fine. Jada parade, amasa dadana, l'enfant de le ballot. Quand de crasser dans la cabane, je suis dans le bayou. Je peux lire le futur dans l'intérieur de d'auto, après sur le sang sur me de zone. De donner les millions et les couteaux de photos des soldats de ces bas de New Orleans.
Je suis dans le bayou. Je suis dans le bayou. De la côte comme de l'alligator, Trixie les cours descend de la côte. Je monte un peu. Je donne dans ta tour. On dit que c'est pas pour l'amour. Je suis dans le bayou. On ne parle de ça. Je suis pas phénomène. Marie te met pour le père. J'ai mon beau costaud pour la fin de semaine. Quand Peggy met sur les gars. Je suis dans le bayou. Je suis dans le bayou. Et dans sur la fête que tu mets. Ce qui s'entangle sur le bord. Et te masser dans la bonne mer. Verte du bayou. Et j'en descends sur la terre que tu mets. Ce que c'est que l'on se bat. Et te fais avancer. Ça va danser dans la belle mer. Verte du bayou. Suis dans un bar, pas dans ma carré. Pas le mot d'une fin. J'ai appris la matière dans le fond, la baroque. Quand il y a crosses de cabane. Je suis dans le bayou. Je suis dans le bayou. If my mother were awake and heard that, she would probably kill me for destroying the French language. Still, speaking of French, that was something I never expected to do in this whole entire live read. Thank you, Fizzy! Trixie came down, mane wrapped in a purple towel, to find Pokey seated at his desk, engaged in paperwork. Oh, you're already here, she said, surprised. Her assistant looked up at her, sent a glance towards the clock on the wall, with his eyebrow in inquisitive fashion. Trixie rolled her eyes in a huff.
Yeah, I know I got up late. Want to make something of it? Bite me!
Pokey sighed and got up, headed toward Trixie. She gasped in shock, backing away with a look of panic in her face.
Wait! I didn't mean literally!
Much to her relief, the stallion just walked past her and headed for the front door without saying a word. Trixie stood there, blinking and staring at the door in complete confusion. Did her assistant just quit? Just as she was asking herself that question, Pokey Pierce's silvery magic opened the door at a dramatic slam, sending a gust of wind that threw Trixie's towel off her still wet mane. The unicorn stallion leapt into the residency and struck a dramatic pose.
Trixie!
He yelled loudly, looking positively frantic.
There's been another mysterious fire. I was on my way to work when I noticed a commotion at the marketplace. Someone torched Mr. Cabbage's stand,
he quickly explained, pointing a hoof in the direction of the market. Trixie was taken aback by this apparent sudden change in mood. She wasn't fully convinced this wasn't some sort of performance, actually. Pokey could actually be a pretty good actor if he wanted to. In fact, he showed more of his talent as he dragged his host into the office. A look of dramatic dismay sets over his features. He put a hoof to his forehead and began recounting how distraught Mr. Cabbage had been at the loss of his cabbages. Trixie, who had yet to eat breakfast, took a second to think a cabbage muffin would be pretty good right now. She was, however, broke out of her culinary daydream by 5 simple words uttered by her assistant.
We have to do something!
Trixie shook her head confused.
Wait, what? Why?
She said, moving a strand of her wet hair out of the way.
It's obvious that we have an arsonist in Ponyville, Trixie,
Pokey said.
It's not like Ponyville has any investigator. You are the Night Court representative. You're supposed to be there for Equestria, and I think Ponyville needs you now.
Trixie recovered her towel using her magic, and was busy rubbing her mane to dry it out.
Oh, what's in it for me?
She asked, her mane exploding in a fluffy mess. Pokey was curious enough not to giggle at the sight. The two of them got back into the office proper, just as Trixie summoned a brush with a flash of blue magic. This was a spell she had learned watching Tulira summon her lyre. She had since then adapted it to her hat, cape, and hairbrush, among other random items in her house.
Well, you would be considered a hero for finding the culprit,
said the stallion.
I saved the world's retired son,
replied the mayor, somewhat offended.
And some ponies in town still think you were about to sell them out to save your own hide,
said Pokey, shrugging as if those accusations were none of his concerns.
Besides, if it would let you play Ace of Clover instead of doing paperwork.
Trixie perked up at the mention of her news literary heroine. She grabbed her hat off the coat rack and landed it on her head. With a flash of magic, her wizard hat turned into a star-studded fedora.
Get your hat! We have a case to solve!
She declared. Pokey smirked.
I don't have a hat with me right now.
Where did you get that magnifying glass?
Asked Raindrops.
The same place I got his hat,
said Trixie, pointing to Pokey's new black bowler hat.
There's a ton of old stuff in the old residency basement.
The male unicorn was currently interviewing witnesses around the marketplace. The way he was blushing while talking to Dr. Minuet seemed to suggest his interrogation had already moved past the subject of the instances.
My cabbages! My cabbages!
Well, Mr. Cabbage, I swear, if I have a chance to actually do the foaming mouth guy, I'm going to be excited. It had been half an hour since Pokey had originally chanced upon the scene of the fire, yet the poor Earth Pony stallion was still crying over his lost stand. Raindrops had been on the scene when they arrived, but this time it had been a unicorn, the aforementioned Dr. Minuet, with a bucket of water that had saved the day. The Pegasus was still worried about all those fires and had stuck around. At the very least, she could keep the owner company while he recovered. Trixie wondered if the overly dramatic farmer was related to one of the flower trio. Trixie had quickly used her magic to scan the spot. Without Raindrops' magic flooding to sight, she did manage to make out a faint aura of wild magic. This was clearly not the work of well-molded magic, like a unicorn would do, and a more natural expression akin to that of a Pegasus or Earth Pony. There was a quality about it that was hard to put into words for anyone without the same magic sight as her. The closest analog Trixie could find was the word spicy, but she neglected not to volunteer that description and kept it to herself. It didn't quite look like the Pegasus magic, but she was no expert on them, so she wasn't outright to ignore the possibility. After that summary examination, she pulled out a magnifying glass out of nowhere, and had went to about examining every square inch of the charred cabbages laid out before her. That's when Pokey trotted back to her side, and a certain far-off look in his eye told Trixie he had other things on his mind, besides helping to pursue Law and Over.
Done flirting for today, Romeo? Finally realized you had no chance with her?
Trixie asked, barely giving her assistant an annoyed glance.
I was not flirting. I was interviewing witnesses. And for your information, she thinks my new hat gives me an air of class,
he said, closing his eyes and turning his chin upward.
Not flirting, huh? Classy is just a nice way of saying stuffy.
Said Trixie, shaking her as to officially dismiss his claim.
She said it makes my eyes look like a warmer shade of green. You're just jealous because everyone thinks your hat looks goofy,
he said with a smirk. That comment got out of rise at Trixie, who whipped her head around.
What? I'll have you know my hat is perfectly fine! All my friends love my hat! Ask Raindrops!
Well, your wizard hat is kind of goofy, said Raindrops, shrugging, but I can't imagine you without it. Trixie grumbled something about element of honesty and just went back to her examination, while Pokey smiled victoriously.
Why don't you make with the skinny, Casanova, and tell us what you've learned between two bits of flirtatious giggling with the good doctor?
She finally said.
Not much to tell. She saw something orange flash by the corner of her eyes, and she turned in that direction, only to watch the cabin stand already in flames. She grabbed a bucket and took it out,
answered the stallion. Mr. Cabbage told me he was still setting up. He went back to his wagon over there to get a tarp when he returned, and it was already on fire. A few seconds later, Dr. Minuet came back with her bucket, added Raindrops.
Trixie nodded. No other witnesses?
As far as I know, Dr. Minuet is the only pony to see the fire start. Every pony else only knows when she called for water,
said Pokey.
Guess we have a proper mystery on our hooves,
said Trixie, now on the opposite side of the stand from her friend. She finally spotted something that wasn't a burnt festival. It was small, orange in color. With some precise application of telekinesis, she put the clue out of the mess.
Ha ha! Now we're getting somewhere, she declared.
Found a clue, boss?
Yes, and don't call me that. Here, take a look at this, said Trixie, bringing her discovery about.
Raindrops gave Mr. Cabbage a pat on the back and went closer to her friend. Floating a field of sparkling blue energy was a tiny feather of bright orange color.
You think our anonymous friend left it behind?
asked Pokey. Trixie rolled her eyes.
No, your mother left it behind. Of course it's his! Do you see any others Pegasus around? Raindrops, I'm no expert on Pegasus anatomy, but do you know what kind of feather this is?
Raindrops gazed at the feather, rubbing her chin with a hoof. It's asymmetrical, so it's obviously not a flight feather. But even by auxiliary covert standard, it's pretty small. If it didn't have a vein and barbs, I think it was a downy feather.
Know any pony that this could belong to?
Asked Pokey. Raindrops shrugged. By color and size, I can only think of little Scootaloo, but I can't doubt it's her. Trixie blinked.
Any particularly compelling reason those fires couldn't be chalked up to some childish mischief?
Putting aside Tyrlee's ranting about her behavior, I don't think the kid has it in her, began Pokey. But more importantly, yesterday's first fire occurred during class hours, and I doubt Tyrlee will let one of her charges out of her sight long enough for one of them to cause the fire trio a panic attack.
Not that it would take long to do that,
pointing out Trixie.
There is that,
said Pokey, nodding. Plus, Scootaloo can't fly yet, so I doubt she could pull this off without someone seeing her run away, added Raindrops.
Well, that sure got us nowhere fast,
said Trixie, turning her gaze back to the mess that used to be Mr. Cabot's stand. Trixie cursed herself for not examining hoofprints around the stand when she first got in sight. Then again, she doubted there was anything left to find, considering how dry the weather had been recently. About a dozen ponies had come to gawk or offer words of encouragement to Mr. Cabot. The farmer began slowly making his way back to his cart by now. He was probably going to go somewhere else to wallow and despair some more. Trixie considered moving his little brainstorming party elsewhere. The smell of burnt cabbages on the air.
Wait a second!
She suddenly exclaimed, pointing a hoof at the tarred mess.
If I found the feather in that mess, then...
Pokey's eyes widened. He realized where Trixie was going.
Then why isn't it burnt like the rest of it?
Exactly!
Guess there's more to our mystery firebug than we thought at first glance,
added Pokey. Trixie quickly turned to Raindrops.
There isn't a pony named Firebug in town, is there?
Raindrops rolled her eye. We're not that lucky, Trixie. Trixie gave a little pout and rubbed her chin with a hoof. Finally, she had an idea that seemed to glimmer for a second.
All right, then, my dear person, I believe it is time to defy and conquer,
she said, closing her eyes and waving her hoof in a white arc dramatically.
Defy and conquer, Pearson?
Said the confused stallion.
Well, maybe not conquer, but defy anyway. You will go see your underworld contacts, while I speak with certain officials to see if any new Pegasus arrived in town lately, or if any Pegasus was acting in a suspicious manner,
she added. Pokey stared at her, his eyebrow knit in confusion. Trixie sighed before explaining herself.
I mean, you go see Pinkie Pie, and I'll go talk to Dizzy at the post office, and meet me at Barry's Underworld. That is, if you don't spend half the morning fluttering your eyelashes at each other!
Pokey was about to object when Raindrop spoke first, interrupting him. Anything you want me to do to help? I can't let some arsonist jerk mess with Ponyville like this, she said, pointing to the ground at her hoof.
Well, if you could keep an eye out in the sky, do a little reconnaissance over the village, that would be helpful. Do a loop around town, then meet with us. If you're not too busy with work, that is,
said the unicorn. The Pegasus shook her head. Nah, I'm on cloud patrol duty today. I just need to make sure some clouds don't clump together, that's all. I can do that and keep an eye out for a pyromaniac at the same time.
Sounds good to me. Now let's go! I want to score a muffin off of Dizzy before she eats them all!